Welcome back to part 2, where I talk about the missing step from before, turning my messy sketch idea into an illustration ready to print. One way I think about this stage is as if I have a big control panel filled with lots of dials I can turn, switches I can flick on and off. So here I have a dial for realism versus simplification. To turn the realism dial down, I look for big shapes. Is a wren's beak really just a triangle? Nope, but that is the simple shape to use here. If we turn up the realism, here we go, it's still the same wren, really, but every bit of it is a little closer to reality. The beak has a curve, the legs have their little knees up here. See how these two pictures have a slightly different tone? I use the information I talked about in the last video about theme and mood and ideas to make decisions here too. Generally, for sillier stories, I'll tilt more towards simplification, and for serious ones, I'll tilt more towards realism. When I'm illustrating something that's sci-fi, fantasy, or historical, I'll generally turn up the backgrounds, turn up the details, so it's easier for you as the audience to feel really immersed in that world. Whereas for a comedy play set in the real world, like Here and There by David Hill, which is all about a dad being ridiculous, the focus of the story is on the characters' emotions and their imaginations. So I turn the background and details right down. What I turned on was exaggeration. In reality, people don't kick their legs up like that when they're searching in a bin, but the exaggeration makes it more obvious that it's a comedy. And while we're on this play, I also want to talk about the color dial. I like to use the color dial strategically. By keeping all the colors very similar, anything different stands out and grabs your attention. I kept all the colors quite muted. Pastel pinks, grayish browns, and then bam! There's the dad's beard, all bright red and orange, the focus of the story. It looks jarring and out of place, which is great because it's an imaginary beard. Of course, it's not the only way to use the color dial. You can set it permanently to black and white if you like, some people do. Or you can use it quite realistically, only changing it for the weather, the location, the time of day. Everyone has a different control panel that works for them. For example, my realism dial does not go all the way to realism because that's not what I'm interested in drawing. You add new switches and dials to your control panel as you go. You can experiment with different styles and mediums like collage, paint, anything you like, as a way of figuring out what kinds of things you might want to add in the future. At the moment, I'm practicing drawing on paper with black pencils and black and white paint instead of using my computer. I'd like to add that to my control panel as something I feel confident with soon. I really like this picture of my cat standing over her fallen foe, the vacuum cleaner, but I'm still working on drawing people in this way. To finish up, I want to tell you about my favourite illustration that I've done for the school magazine. It's for the poem Fox by Janine Bryan, which I loved. I turned up the realism because I wanted it to feel serious. But then, in the reflection, I used completely unrealistic bright colours to draw your attention there and make the magical world of the fox, who can see scent trails in a way that we can't, seem really enticing and exciting. As a bonus tip, to turn up the magical dial, add some sparkles. Get a dark background and flick and spatter tiny drops of pale paint over it, along with a few wavy lines if you like. In an illustration for print, this looks way more magic and sparkly than glitter itself. That's what I use to create the trail behind the fox here. That's all from me today. Thank you for joining me and have fun creating your own illustrations.